Hey everyone, it's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today on our show, we have our good friends Christabelle and Jonathan with VEG-N. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. How about you?
I'm doing good too. I like your tapestry in the background. We try to put up different ones in the Fledge. We call it the pitch pit now. But we never have good ones. That's a great one I like behind you.
Thanks.
So what you guys been doing today?
We've been going back and forth, getting ready to go back to the business. Honestly, we just put this tapestry up because behind it's a tack board that has all sorts of notes and scrambled looking mess. And we were like, yeah, this looks way neater. We cover it up with some nice art.
I know what some of your brainstorm sessions result in, Jonathan. So I imagine what it looks like behind there.
We needed the full big board, as you can see.
Yeah. So, we're going to take turns a little bit when we talk about yourselves. But why don't you guys tell us about yourselves and your projects that you got going on?
We go first? Yeah. Okay. The different projects I have that I'm working on, I guess we'll talk about what I'm working on with the universities, and then we'll talk about startup.
All right.
Because one of the big projects I've been working on is helping Wayne State develop their program Industry X. And what that's doing is it's helping connecting different functioning and working companies in different industries to different student groups for advanced research and industry partnerships to help network our larger innovation community as universities look to partner with different corporate groups to create that larger ecosystem for funding avenues. And that has been a fun change of pace and kind of the next phase from where I had been working with MSU with the startups for the last 5 years as their engineering intern and then their legal consultant to help with the different founding processes. And now that project pathway has led us to our avenue with our startups that we started in a food truck serving some plant-based classics with our chef here, Christabelle, and I'll let her talk way more about where VEG-N's at and where we got to that, and the big teaching program from there that pivoted out as we found our next steps in our niche in the Lansing community. The health department reached out and explained that if we could create a teaching program now that we had gone through a few steps in business iterations as a food business, it would be very helpful for them to guide other businesses and people to that resource for our grading the Lansing community. And from there, we're looking to add a plant-based variety and some vegan options through VEG-N.
That is awesome. And before we switch over to Christabelle, where were you born and raised? What high school did you go to?
So I was born in Dearborn, Michigan, and I was raised there for a couple of years before we moved to Livonia. And from there, the biggest thing I can talk about and rave about is the food through Dearborn into Livonia. That has definitely led into passions and made me a foodie from birth. And then where I went to high school was Livonia Churchill. And in high school, I did football and wrestling. And one of the biggest changes I went through personally was with wrestling and that growth process. And oddly enough, I was able to eat way more during wrestling than I've ever been able to eat. But the crazy thing that I experienced through my years of wrestling is freshman year, I started wrestling at 206 pounds. And so I was wrestling in the 215 weight class. But by senior year, I was down to 171 and had just a completely different physique. And that drive and that sort of learning not to give up and keep pushing for different goals through sports as well as the different entrepreneurial events we did with the wrestling team. Because one of the coolest things we did as a wrestling team was we hosted the robotic team's actual regional conference at the school. And so we ran concessions and other random stuff just to help get more funding for wrestling. But having that interesting collaboration with robotics and myself being on both sides of the fence that way was just an awesome ecosystem to have Livonia building. And that definitely led into different entrepreneurship opportunities that led me to MSU.
So now we had a wrestler on yesterday. I'm a wrestler. You're a wrestler. I'm going to have to start a playlist called Wrestlers, I guess.
Sounds good.
So a lot of pressure on you, Christabelle. We said you're going to say everything about VEG-N, but why don't you tell us about you and your projects? Because I think you got VEG-N and maybe a couple things up your sleeve too, right?
Yeah, we've got some side hustles. I'm sure that's, when we first started with entrepreneurship, way back when with the tooth scrub. So
Yeah.
I got not roped in, entrepreneurship with him just because he was like, we could actually like sell this tooth scrub. Like it's actually really, really good product. So that's when, after I had been I graduated from MSU in 2017, and that's when I was like actually applying for full-time jobs, like a real career. And he presented that opportunity, and I was like, well, that sounds like a much better option to try out than going and working for a corporate office somewhere and, working my soul away. So that kind of spiraled into really just being passionate about helping, which I knew that I always wanted to like help others in some way and give back in some way. But, how exactly was a little bit fuzzy for me. So having that opportunity kind of led also into the food truck, which I think is really funny because you're actually the one that found the food truck for us. So I think that's a really cute full circle fact that Marshall, who was on the other day, we were together and he was like, yeah, I'm going to see a food truck. Like I might get into it. And I was like, oh, that sounds like something that might be right down my alley. So kind of led into that. And I feel like I'm going all over the place here, but there's a lot to cover. So
have you ever seen this show?
Yeah.
It's a good ramble.
So it's definitely okay. Before I ask you a big question that I want to ask you, let me ask you the more simple one. Where were you born and raised, and what high school did you go to?
Yes, I was on the opposite side of the state, the west side between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo, a little town called Wayland. So my high school actually was all the surrounding towns that went to Wayland Union High School. And I was actually homeschooled until 8th grade. So I was also watching the show with Nia. And I was like, yes, you go, girl. I love it.
Isn't she amazing?
Yes, I was also a huge history nerd back then. So I can definitely relate.
Just under the book she wants. Don't let no school system tell you when you can learn what.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So then high school definitely allowed me to get more involved in the social aspect of things. So I got really involved in clubs, and that was my first kind of taste at entrepreneurship with Business Professionals of America, which we were also reminiscing on earlier because he did DECA. Yeah. So it's really the same kind of club in high school, but different ones had different versions of it. But that was definitely my first exposure. But then college I didn't really think about it again once I got there. It was kind of more trying to just get through college, to be honest. So I kind of got distracted, and then once it was actually time to, like I said, find that real job, and we were talking about it, it just made the most sense to kind of pursue that, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
So this entrepreneurial bug is catchy, isn't it, man?
Yes.
It's so much fun.
And MSU in the Lansing community makes it so easy to fall in love. So.
Yeah, MSU's program is so good. And I have to give you two credit because it was really starting out probably at the beginning of your college career where they were really starting to put things together, and you two were just rock stars in the whole program.
Yeah. Shout out to Paul and Lori as well as Ken, because we talk about that all the time and how that program started a year and a half before I started college, and so we got pretty much in at the baseline and watched how the space changed and how it grew from one phase to two phases, and now it's a part of the entire business institute. And it's crazy to watch how much love is being put into it.
It's super. I don't even know what the right word is, but I mean, just how it was. Oh, you guys get off campus and go do your crazy stuff over there, and then all of a sudden you've got this huge, I don't know, multi-million-dollar building with all this stuff housed in it, and it's just been super crazy.
Yeah.
So what I want to know, what other people might want to know, is that how did you learn to make plant-based meals taste so damn good? Because your meals at the food truck were amazing, Christabelle. And what did you do? How long have you been? Are you vegan or vegetarian?
So right, I'd say for the past few months, I've actually legitimately been vegetarian. Before that, I would label myself as flexitarian, but largely would just eat plant-based meals, would just like take a bite of his sandwich once in a while.
I'm a bad influence.
Yeah.
But I don't know, basically just it started out kind of having digestive issues and not being able to really like feel great after eating. And then I had some friends that were vegan, and we would get together for meals. And Thanksgiving in particular was a turning point for us because we had an actual Thanksgiving vegan meal. And I'd been like dabbling it with plant-based meals before, and I've always eaten a lot of fruits and veggies thanks to my parents growing up. So that was never an issue for me. But as far as like actually eating meals that weren't centered around like a meat as the main like fancy thing, was kind of a turning point. So eating that Thanksgiving meal where we both like felt good afterwards, where you didn't have that lethargy after, where you just need to take that nap and you just feel gross for the next like day just because you ate so much dairy and meat and stuff that's not really processing in your body the best. I think that was a huge point where even he was like, okay, this has some validity to it. Like I actually feel better eating this. So
it's fun. It's funny that you reference Thanksgiving as the day that you went that way, because I was in Dubai after I was a very strict vegetarian. I was vegan for a while. I was even what's it called, Jamie. I didn't know the belief either, but I started for some reason only eating things that were picked. So I could eat a tomato, but I couldn't eat a potato.
Yeah.
And then these guys took me out in Dubai one day, and we had a ton of seafood, and it was right before Thanksgiving. And I was like, all right, I did that 20 years. It screwed it all up, but I'm going to still be vegetarian. Then I came home for Thanksgiving dinner and said, screw it, I'm eating turkey. And I've eaten, I don't eat pork, but I've eaten almost everything else since then.
Yeah.
So the opposite story.
I'm definitely the same way. I go back and forth. For me, I had my sports careers in high school ended early because I tore my ACL and then ended up re-tearing it through college. But the entire time I've dealt with just inflammation issues and swelling in my leg. And so that's led to different weird early handicap problems as a 25-year-old. And having an actual vegan chef to be able to cook everything, as well as refine things down to a menu that we can share with others, has been such an amazing experience and just, I don't know, blessing, for lack of a better term.
In entrepreneurialism, we never really think of failure. We think of, either fail forward fast or fail fast, fail often, or succeed or learn. How many dishes did you make that you were learning from as opposed to succeeding from? Like, were you trying? Was it trial and error, or were you guys just nailing it right from the start?
I don't know how many were good and how many were bad.
Do I get in trouble?
I don't know what your specs are for trouble, but
I mean,
it was hit and miss to start before we refined the general American palate that I had, I guess.
For the
Also-
restaurant, it's also different than like what I like to experiment with at home, because sometimes I get a little bit crazy. So things that I wouldn't necessarily want to serve at the restaurant, but I'm like, let's try this. So I don't know. There's not really been too much that like has been so bad that we've had to like just throw it away, but we're also pretty frugal, so if things don't turn out good, I'm like, well, you know, it's still all right. We'll still eat it.
Add some sauce, make some
Might not be
leftovers.
ideal, but it's still food. So
It was hit and miss to start until we figured out what we got down, and now she's getting into these sauces that have been pretty amazing. And hopefully, when we get to open, we'll be able to produce some veg sauce to put on everything to go with her veg onions and bring that back to the community, because we had a fun little following to start that made me feel good because I wasn't the only one dreaming about them.
Yeah, you guys, people loved your food truck, and I don't think we've quite covered what you're in the middle of right now. Will you expound on that a little bit? You've got a place. You're not just on wheels.
So with the food truck, we were about to open it up again for the season, because the winter time was not feasible for the food truck. It was so cold. So even the time that we were operating for Silver Bells, we had the little heater in there running, and it was like my toes were frozen. Everything was frozen. Whoever's cooking is fine because, you know, the grill is hot. So, but me by the window, I'm like freezing. So I was like, we can't do this again next year. But we were planning on opening again for the spring and the summer, and then COVID, of course, hits. And with the amount of storage space that we had in the food truck, I didn't really feel comfortable. We would have had to go to the grocery store like pretty much every time we operated, if not every other. So I just wanted to kind of follow the whole quarantine thing. And so we decided that we would just kind of hold off on opening up the food truck. And then this whole drive-through location kind of manifested because we knew that that's where, with COVID and everyone's eating habits changing over, you know, every time we pass a drive-through, it's out the lines out to almost to the road every time.
Yeah.
So
It was
we're
supposed
like,
to be
okay, I don't even want to get out of my car to get food if I'm picking it up from somebody. Like, I'll switch the, you know, like the pizza place that I go to or the whatever for someone that's actually being conscious about how they're treating everybody during COVID.
Yeah.
So knowing that and how, you know, we were eating during COVID, we were like, drive-through is really, really where it's at. And this location kind of happened. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Right, because we had this planned into our business model for a couple years out as we actually grew our community in the food truck. And
We're trying to lead into it, but then it kind of just forced it to happen now.
it put us into a do or die mode. It was the food truck's not an option given the locations and the current pivots we'd have to make with the different health situations. And the drive-through window, as well as online ordering, had taken over. Now 60% of food service is through online ordering. And that service system that Christabelle was able to contact through Toast is the company, explained that if we could get an actual drive-through location that would bring everything to completion to make it all operable. And from there, we just kept hunting around Lansing and contacting different community members. And oddly enough, we were able to connect with a old business owner from the old Grand River Fish Fry. And shout out to Mr. Salah and his sons for giving us this opportunity to move into that space, because they were able to expand operations into a new space into Detroit and move up their business. And from there, we were able to move into this new drive-through location that's a few blocks east of Zuby's and Cosmos Pizza, just off the split between Cesar Chavez and Old Saginaw.
Yeah. So when do you think you'll open? Do you have any estimate yet, or are you still in the early phases, or depends on the health department and all these other crazy things?
Right. We've been in constant communication with the health department, and the big news we got from them was if we want to get the additional commissary license, that might take a little time, and they're also closed from a little bit before Christmas till after New Year's, and so that takes out a good chunk this month. So we were looking to open originally for January, but due to the additional license, we're going to see if we can't push that through this month. That way we can get us open as well as Menu Bubble operating out of Lansing.
Yeah, that's exciting too. But I do want to say to the health department, it's every damn day. Entrepreneurs don't take a break. You can't shut down.
No, we don't shut down, but also the health department's been such a nice contact for us.
Oh, okay. I'll be nice.
Person to work with. Well, her big situation that we learned working with them is as they had to enforce all these new health regulations, and as the executive order fell in the health department and not the governor's office, they now had to enforce this, but they weren't given any additional funding or people to work. And so she just got way more pile on her desk. And I'm sitting there like, I don't want your position either.
Yeah, I actually want to correct what I said because I love health departments, because almost every inspector that you run into has a genuine concern for your business and the public health. And to balance that is always a struggle. My previous software company, I worked with health departments all over the world, from Dubai to Amsterdam to Southeast Asia and America and everything. So,
because they have to play the bad guy, but they're there for the community.
Yeah. So they really are good guys. And I really don't want to let that stigma keep going that, it's the cops. They're not the cops. So, first of all, is there anything more you want to say about the opening or the new place or anything like that?
If you don't already follow us on social media, do that, and we'll keep you updated for when it looks like we're actually going to open, because, like you said, there's a lot of dependencies, so we can't necessarily put a date out today, but we definitely want to let the community know that we're trying our best and working hard every damn day. So.
Well, I also think that the community is really cheering for you all, because you do have a following, and a lot of people I know, a lot of our crowd loves you guys. So we can't wait to be able to come through your drive-through.
That makes me so happy. I love it so much.
Yeah, me too. And the other thing is, I'll put some links over the next several days in the comments and the description and all of that so people can find you. But it's really super easy to find. VEG-N, right?
Yeah, it's like at EatVeg-N, I think.
.com. Yeah. As well as our socials are all EatVeg-N.
I'll find it all and we'll put it in here.
Cool.
So we've got in the permutations of this question, there's going to be maybe 3 answers at least, but I think that, maybe Christabelle does something, you do something, Jonathan, and then you guys do together. I love permutations. I'm a statistician, so I like figuring this out. What's something that you individually do every damn day, and then maybe something you all do together every damn day to push your needle forward? The mission.
You want to go first again?
I'll go first. I think that it's really important to, if you're going to be successful, to also take self-care very seriously. So something that I try to do every day is intuitive eating, and really just try to listen to my body and provide it what it needs to feel and do what it needs to do, because I know that if I don't treat my body right, it's only gonna hurt me in the long run. I try to do the same thing.
People need to learn.
Sometimes
people need to learn about intuitive eating more, because your body really that craving is real. Not the sugar craving, not the bad stuff craving that the food companies pile on us.
Not the synthetic crap. Yeah.
If you
don't eat
eating fruits and veggies and listening to your body will tell you oh, hey, right now a kiwi sounds really good, and then you'll be like, oh wait, I was actually needed this whatever nutrient was in there, and you're like, whoa.
When I don't listen to it about bananas, my feet cramp up almost every single time.
Yeah, that's too funny. For me, it's my leg and my calf, but the bananas are always huge.
Yeah. So what about you, Jonathan?
What I do every day to push the needle is I try to read or listen to an audiobook. Since lockdown, I've probably crunched around somewhere between 80 and 100 audiobooks, as well as just reading different stuff, because that constant learning, it fuels me to compound it into what we're doing and see what other things other people have learned, and not try and reinvent the wheel when it comes to business or historical truths, as well as just trying to understand where we're at and what we're trying to build into a greater community system. And so trying to learn something new every day is a big thing I'm on for pushing the needle.
The audiobooks, man, they always throw me off because they say something important and I start daydreaming about it, and then the whole book's gone. And I'm like, what did he say?
Yeah.
For me, I'm the opposite, because I don't know if it's oddly enough, but I'm dyslexic. And so it's really good for creativity and brainstorming, but like really bad for like writing and reading. And so audiobooks help me a bunch there, because it cuts down the amount of time I have to spend focusing and getting distracted when something's a little mixed up and did I read something right? And now I'm thinking about what that could have been or what I want to do with the thought. And so for me, it's a different kind of balance.
So self-care for him, because he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, I'm sure, because none of us men do, right?
I definitely overdo it.
We're all idiots. And then learning for you, I mean, those are two great things. What about together? Is there something as partners in the business, partners in these endeavors, partners, however, is there something you do together every day that pushes your needle forward?
I really like the brainstorming sessions we do pretty much every day. And I don't know if it correlates directly with smoking weed, or if that's just a fun caveat, but it's definitely a creativity stimulant for myself. And whether it's food items or new business concepts, or now I've been rambling about how we can attach more data to our food network to actually create a different distribution system if we can grow this into a franchise and as we do it. But at least having her listen to me and giggle to me while I ramble about these and then bounce off little twists is a huge thing that I appreciate we do every damn day.
That's a good one.
You like that one, Christabelle, or you got another one too?
No, that was a pretty good cover of, smoking and brainstorming.
Yeah. I was going to ask you earlier when you were talking about things that you didn't want to serve the public. I was going to say, like, throw a little weed in there from time to time, but I didn't know where you guys wanted to go.
I mean, I'm down with it. I've had my med card forever, and now that it's legal, one of our actual dreams is to see if we can't create a plant-based business and then align with whatever city groups we need to get one of the micro dispensary or micro business license to actually infuse cannabis in small amounts into the food to help normalize that and bring that economy to the community, because it would be a full sustainable system, and cannabis and the tax rate that helps everybody pull off of it. I don't see what wouldn't encourage the city on it, but that is, again, a few steps down the road, unless the universe throws another speeding change like we fell into this current drive-through opportunity.
Never know what happens when you put it out in the universe. So
plant the seeds.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I like the way you're thinking. I'm a big weed guy too. Everybody knows that. So I haven't been shy about that ever.
I mean, it's really hard to be when it's such an amazing medicine.
Yeah. And it is a medicine. I've always called it a cure-all. It's always made me healthier. It's made me physically stronger. It's made me mentally more aware and expanded. And so I love the way.
And as of this last week, the UN officially declared that it has medical benefits. And so the United Nations is on board with the medical value of cannabis. It's going to be a changing times.
I haven't read the article, but I think the House, the federal House, the National House voted to decriminalize it today across the board. So that's a huge step.
It's a huge step. Yeah. We're just worried about, because myself, I also have some background in medical or cannabis law and other fun startup avenues that way. And I'm curious to see how it affects the tax rates and the actual pricing for the legal market, because the amount of government testing that's about to be thrown into the mix is going to be an interesting.
Well, is that just to legalize it, or do you like that to decriminalize it?
Well,
to legalize
decriminalizing
it, then the FDA needs to do all that stuff.
True, and so they get closer to it, but it's, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword as we get closer to the actual full legalization.
I've had a lot of friends who have spent a lot of time in prison that they're either never going to recover that time back because they're already out, or they're still in prison. We need to let these people out of prison for this crime. It wasn't a crime. It shouldn't have never been a crime. And I just want to say that. And we're not being nice, and we're not being fair, and we need to get these people out of prison. And there's a lot of black people in prison because of marijuana, and now we're all out here enjoying it. We got to fix that. And I think you've worked on that some a little bit, right, Jonathan?
I've worked on it some, and I've also had a very personal experience with it that I haven't really talked about it, but now seems like a good opportunity for it. When I was in my sophomore year of undergrad, we were going to a music festival in Tennessee where we were randomly pulled over and then pulled on charges for cannabis paraphernalia, as well as right. And so they were pretty much grabbing everybody on tailgating while we were bumper to bumper waiting into a festival, pulling you out, doing that sort of thing. And then, long story short, the court side of it that I had to go down for and experience in Tennessee, in Murfreesboro, was astonishing, where they literally, it was racism, for lack of a better term. Anyone of color, the judge clearly had a bias for whether the fines or the actual need for time spent in community service, whereas a lot of the actual white people were just fined, like myself, and went through an interesting extortion process where I got random phone calls saying I needed to pay this additional fee. And me being scared shitless in college, I just gave my credit card over the phone, didn't really care what the repercussions were, hoped they were actually what they said they were. And then, oddly enough, a couple years down the road, I get a letter in the mail saying this is now a civil case. And it was a full extortion and more or less racketeering bracket that became the court case that everyone should look up, called Rodriguez versus Murfreesboro. And what was happening is this judicial branch in this little town had given out their, not parole, but what's the other one? Yeah, probation system to a private LLC that was issuing these random charges and extorting all sorts of money, and then causing way more systematic failure and defaults that brought people into much more serious charges. And from there, the court case played out that all of this was illegal, and what the company ended up doing was literally burning all of the files before they could actually be gone through. And so whenever I get a background check, it pulls Tennessee, but it doesn't pull anything, which is just a weird caveat, because it was a misdemeanor that was expunged, but then the company that created the entire circumstance deleted any systematic source of record. So probably the FBI has an original copy, but aside from that, it turned into an skewed money game that ultimately put a lot of people in prison and pulled a lot more money into cash for a policing system that really didn't need to exist there.
Yeah. The war on drugs has always been a war on us, and it's especially been a war on the people of color that are us as well. So sorry you had to go through that and all of that.
It was a learning experience. The biggest thing that I'm sorry for is the fact that I'll always remember the faces on the kids where the judge gave me the fine. And I'm sitting there like, I can cry and create this sort of money and have access to this right now, but then seeing people where the fine was actually going to put them into a prison situation or a community service situation where they couldn't even get there, and now they were into a much bigger mess that was out of state, and it destroyed lives, and they did it for cash. It was purely greed, and the war on drugs was wrong, and it's always they lost. We'll see how it plays out from here.
It actually, to me, it's much bigger than just the next step, which is you have to go to jail or you have to go to the community service or whatever, because the other thing that it does, and this is what happened to my daughter, is she got caught smoking marijuana and got sent to NA. So she had to do all these programs, and it was in NA where she learned that, hey, marijuana's in your system for a month. You should take Xanax. You should take Vicodin. And that's where her ultimate opioid addiction came from, and her ultimate death from a fentanyl overdose. So to me, it's very personal, and I'm very, very pissed off.
Yeah.
So
it's a mess.
Yeah. So, but enough on that for right now. Let's get back to VEG-N. So you guys have this very cool outlook on how we should be eating. And, do you want to talk a little bit about, there's health impacts, but all the other impacts on stuff that vegetarianism or a plant-based meal has, like the environment or the economy or things like that? You want to touch on that for a second?
Yeah, there's a ton of fun facts about like what eating a plant-based meal for. Like if you eat a plant-based meal for a month, it's pretty much like the same equivalent of saving water and forest and everything as not showering for 6 months. So I know there was that whole craze of everybody taking really short showers and whatever. It's super easy. Just eat plant-based and, you can still enjoy your shower.
There's some big signs and posters we just put up inside to remind us and get the propaganda going. But yeah, the two big ones are a pound of meat equivalents to about 6 months of not showering. And then eating plant-based for a month saves 900 square feet of actual forest. And so thinking about those numbers and as they scale and what we can do, even as a community, is huge, as well as if we can get an actual trend and bring this into mass consciousness as quickly as possible.
And we're definitely not here to tell anybody like how to eat or anything like that. You enjoy whatever meal you want to enjoy, but we want to make it easy for people to enjoy a plant-based meal and make that decision, because that's ultimately like, as humans, we usually do what's easy for us. So I feel like if they have the choice to, come eat at our place and then they feel better after eating there and they enjoy how the food tastes and the whole experience, they're just going to be that much more likely to come back and do it again when they get to choose that over McDonald's or other, fast food types that don't make you feel great after eating them.
Oddly enough, that was one of my main drivers, or maybe my main driver was the environmental impact. But I also started learning about slaughterhouses and things like that and the humanity that was being lost in those places.
I didn't know we had a slaughterhouse. I forget the name of it, but that was dumping right into Lake Michigan. That was on...
That your wife talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my wife will tell us in 2 seconds what the name of that is.
That's awful. And the fact that it's been going on for so long. And to go back to the health department again, kind of bring it full circle, working with Amy, she was telling us that because Lansing is such an old infrastructure, she still occasionally finds the building that is still connected to the river rather than the actual public sewage system. And that, to be in 2020, and that's still an actual issue because of whether it's lack of filing or things lost over time, we need to protect our water. That's what it comes down to.
I used to swim in the Grand River in all kinds of different spots when I was little. And can you imagine doing that now?
I don't even like kayaking in it sometimes.
I know, it's gross.
But after getting the notices of saying whatever city's uptown up here is dumping their excess whenever their sewage plant overflows, I'm like, that shouldn't be the go-to. That's not an answer. That's just moving the problem down the river to the actual capital, which is a bad irony for being the water state.
Oh, don't get me started on that, man. The fact that we treat our water so bad and we should be the stewards of fresh water for the entire world. And oh my God. Mm-hmm. And we got we have 3 smokestacks in our logo, and we don't have 3 rivers in our logo. I don't know what's going on here. So yesterday, you guys told me you watched Thomas, and he's the electric vehicle guy. He's the renewable energy guy. What are your plans for renewable? How do you see that being in your future of VEG-N and your quest to conquer the world?
Want me to ramble?
Yeah, you definitely have that one.
So we're trying to do this in 2 different ways. The first way we're trying to accomplish renewables is through what we're looking to do for different delivery methods. Knowing that most delivery through restaurants is within a local couple miles, actually having a localized electric fleet that we can create something between the Jimmy John's and Domino's delivery system to create that for minimal eco footprint while actually marketing and showing the community, and again, leading by example. This is how delivery should be standardized. Aside from that, we're also working to create renewable as well as sustainable growth project and platform. That way we can help change the way the food distribution and resource chain is currently relied upon and created. And what we're looking to do is create more growing space inside our different restaurants and ideally franchisees, because with the change of eating habits and the current closing of eating spaces, most places are never going to have as large of a indoor dining area. And being able to convert that to an actual grow space through the technical background I come from and what we've already been building around the house through our own grow projects, being able to actually teach others and standardize that through a community center and platform is a huge way to help make this change. Because the big thing for everyone, I find, is the information barrier. It's the not knowing what you don't know doesn't ever get you anywhere.
Yeah. Have you talked to like Jeremy Hurt with Red Bike Delivery?
Yes, he is. We're definitely going to use him for deliveries in the beginning. The nice thing with potentially expanding to our own delivery fleet would be that we could, expand and go to places like East Lansing and etc. without, worrying about somebody on a bike trying to get across the highway and everything.
And the big thing I want to do is collect data on all of it and actually having our own fleet that I can connect with the current 5G networks that are being put in will help us with all of our deliverability systems.
You guys are so cool. So on the show tomorrow, we've got Shay. We all know Shay because he's part of the ecosystem. And he's going to come talk about Startup Grind and hopefully a bunch of other stuff that he's working on. What question would you like me to pass on to Shay tomorrow?
I think our question for Shay tomorrow would be, what's your biggest entrepreneurial fear?
And, it's funny that you're asking that because I was walking down the stairs at the Fledge the other day a few hours ago. And I was thinking about someone else who I love dearly, but they look at me and they see what we do and they want to do that too. And they're looking for some snap of something that's special that happens. And I think it's just the lack of fear. I just don't have this fear of anything going wrong. And I'm probably reckless and all these other things, but fear is such a killer. And but we all have them. I have tons of fears, but sometimes I work through it. Sometimes they keep me from doing stuff. What's your biggest fears? And let's do that triangular thing again too, where each of you and then together, what do you think it is?
I'd say my biggest entrepreneurial fear that I moan about to Christabelle from time to time is working for all of this, but not actually having it make the difference and impact we're trying to create. And that little bit of not knowing the road in between and insecurity is part of the fear. But what I always remind myself and again read on through a bunch of different entrepreneurial greats and autobiographies is it comes back down to that appetite for risk and just understanding that that's totally part of the game and getting comfortable in turbulent water, if you will.
Yeah. And don't swim against the river. You don't need to.
You don't need to. You spend a lot of time wondering and trying to think back of where you started, but then you realize it's taking you somewhere better. And that brought us exactly to a drive-through.
I would like to comment on that. I would also like you to pay attention to the day-by-day impact that you guys have had, because you made plant-based, you helped to make it. Bangos does some stuff with it and things like that. But you've had an impact, and even if it doesn't realize with everything that you've had, you've already made a dent in Lansing and changed us. And I'm really proud to know you for that. So I just want to comment on that. So even though it's a fear, don't forget the day by day and to pat yourself on the back and to realize how special you are.
I love it.
What about you, Christabelle?
Yeah, no, to hear you say that means a lot, because I think one of the biggest things that I struggle with is like something personal, but also that carries into entrepreneurialism, whatever. And that's just like the base fear of not being good enough and not deserving. So just working through that.
They call that the imposter system, right? And I constantly am, oh my God, what am I telling these people? Why are they listening to me? What the hell is going on?
Yep, so the best thing I always heard was fake it till you make it. And it's true. You might not feel like you should be in that position, but you're there for a reason. So do what you can with it.
Well, you will always be the expert on Christabelle, and in my opinion, you are the expert in plant-based meals here in the Lansing, Mid-Michigan area. So what about together? What are the fears you guys have? You're like, oh shit, what are we doing? This is going to screw up everything.
Well, I'd say the big fear we go back and forth on that way is I'm always trying to expand too quickly to actually do the big damn thing. And she's sitting there going, yeah, you need to actually like dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure you know what you're walking on, though other people can also do it. And not expanding too rapidly such that you implode just like the stars do.
Yeah. What about you, Christabelle? Is that IBID, the same one?
That sounds like a pretty good one for a combination one. I can't think of anything to
that's about the seventh time in our conversation where we've had a yin yang type of thing where, I'm with you, Jonathan. Let's fail forward fast. Let's just do it. Forget all this other stuff. And my wife is always coming in and saying, well, let's do this and let's do that. And let's make sure of this. And I get pot committed a lot, and she doesn't like that.
That's too funny.
Very similar. I think your wife and I would get along very well. He was saying that we couldn't meet because I would just
no combining forces.
Right.
Right. I wouldn't have any opportunity to play.
So thank you so much. We're not quite ending yet, but I really do admire you two. Both of you have done multiple entrepreneurial things. I think I put in my tweet earlier about you being on the show. If you don't know what serial entrepreneurs are, come watch the show today. And
you can have him on again, and he would have like way more.
I'm happy to talk about other projects. We were just keeping it food focused today.
That legal kiosk, so many damn things. Room to Grow was a company that we had back at the Grand Ledge Fledge where we were trying to create grow rooms that you could just plop into a restaurant. And I don't know why you and I don't talk, at least once a week.
It sounds like we're going to start doing that.
Yeah, I hope that we do. So before we say goodbye to everybody, you got something you want to take us out with? Some word of advice, something insightful, deuces, anything you want. What do you think? And this is a question I never prepare anybody for.
I've been reading a lot of good books. Do you have any books you usually recommend to people?
I'm trying to remember the exact quote, that way I don't butcher it, but it goes back to an old Chinese proverb: if you can be the person performing the act, or you can be the person observing and recording it, but you cannot fundamentally be both, because you're either, if everybody's played video games, you're driving the car first person or you're looking at it third person, and you can't be both. And so to actually be the entrepreneur and ride the wave, that's all first person. That's riding the wave from the bow of the boat, if you will, and that's a mess. It doesn't matter if there could be an entire cruise going on top of the ship. You're still the first thing hitting the wave and finding your way through the water. And that's been a big thing I've been focusing on and hitting on, is actually refining and being comfortable being that pioneer.
I love it. What about you, Christabelle?
Just a shout out to follow us again on social media, because there's going to be a lot of awesome things happening in the next year for the Lansing plant-based community. And you don't have to actually be vegan or vegetarian or whatever to try a plant-based meal out once in a while.
I like the term flexitarian. That's how I do it.
That's definitely,
Oh, that's nice. I like that too.
And once this drive-thru's open, it's going to be so much easier to eat and get this food that I am so thrilled and excited. That way I can do the business thing, but then the food's there for everyone, and we know what we can expand on.
Yeah.
And I guess a big thing I wanted to, I'm sorry to take this away from you, a point that I forgot to mention earlier is one thing we are trying to consider for the community that I do want some outreach on, is trying to do kind of like a soup kitchen one day a week or something like that. Because through elementary school through high school, I worked at and helped with different soup kitchens, and St. Patrick's in Detroit was a big one for myself in the parish that we like to help with, and meeting different people in different walks of life and actually being able to help and serve the community in that true essence is an amazing feeling that should be just a normal part of every community, because to have high highs, you're going to have low lows. And if that means needing help from another person that you don't know, that's part of the story of life. And we would like to see if we could help bring that to Lansing. And we don't know what happened to Punks with Lunches and their food outreach aspect, or if there's any other groups in Lansing that would be interested to do something. So we have a drive-through window, and even like a walkthrough would be something like that to try. And I don't know if I'm already getting the health department mad by talking before I should actually, but that's something that I'm passionate about.
Punks with Lunch will be on the show on Wednesday. So they're still around. I can connect you with tons of people that want to help. And that neighborhood that you're basically in, because you're going east of Old Town a little bit, or you're probably technically still in Old Town, but Old Town has left that neighborhood behind. That's a rough neighborhood. That's a neighborhood that could use any help that they can get. And for you guys to get closer to that, just one more reason to love you both.
definitely.
And it's awesome because we've already met some of the neighbors and some of the parents and kids that come through talking about how it would just be a nice addition and uplift to the community. Like we want to serve and support.
Yeah. So I'm going to go out with that statement that I just made. I love you two very much. You are good for Lansing. You are making Lansing stronger and healthier and more aware of what we're doing. And thank you so, so very much for being on Every Damn Day today.
Thank you for hosting. It's a really awesome platform that gives everybody a chance to be heard. So right back at you. You're amazing too, and we love you.
You're the man, Jerry.
We're going to talk soon.